Queen Mire stood before the massive crystal window that stretched across the entire wall of her throne room. Her body glowed with soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. The light grew brighter when she felt strong emotions. Right now, it flickered with pain and sadness that had not left her for 5 long years. Beyond the window lay the great capital city of Astros Prime. Millions of crystalline beings moved through floating pathways between towering spires that reached toward the stars. Each building was grown from living crystal that responded to the thoughts and needs of its inhabitants. The city itself was beautiful beyond imagination, but Queen Mire saw none of its wonder today. She was thinking about her daughter, Princess Soyul. 5 years ago, Soyul had taken her personal exploration vessel into the dangerous region of space, known as the Void Sector. She had been investigating strange energy readings that their scientists could not explain. The princess was brilliant and curious about everything in the universe. She always wanted to discover new things and push the boundaries of what their people knew. But she never came back. The search fleets had looked for months. They sent their best ships and their most skilled navigators into the Void Sector. Many vessels reported strange sensor readings and equipment failures when they got too close to the heart of that dark region. Some ships barely made it back at all. The few that did return brought no trace of Princess Soyul or her ship. Eventually, Queen Mire had to call off the search. The military leaders told her they could not risk any more ships or crew members. The Void Sector seemed to swallow everything that entered its deepest areas. They declared Princess Soyul officially dead and held a memorial service that lasted for 7 days. But Queen Mire never accepted that her daughter was truly gone. She refused to name a new heir, even though the noble houses pressed her constantly. The law stated that the throne must have a clear successor, but the queen would not choose anyone else. In her heart, she believed that somehow Soyul was still alive. This caused problems throughout the Celestial Empire. The empire stretched across 3 entire galaxies and contained billions of Australian citizens. They needed stable leadership and clear laws. Without a named heir, the government could not make long-term plans or important decisions about the future. Admiral Dong Yun was the most vocal critic of the Queen's refusal to name a successor. He was a tall Australian whose crystalline body glowed, with sharp white light that cut through darkness like a blade. His family had served the royal house for centuries, but he believed duty to the empire came before personal feelings. "Your Majesty," he had said during their last meeting, "the people need certainty. The outer worlds are becoming restless. Some planetary governors question whether the royal line will continue. We must name a new heir before the empire begins to fracture." General Jihan always defended the Queen's position. She was smaller than Admiral Dong Yun, but her green light burned steady and strong. She had been Princess Soyul's combat instructor and remained loyal to her memory. "The princess may yet return," General Jihan would argue. "We should not abandon hope so easily. The royal bloodline has ruled for 3,000 years. We can wait a little longer." The debates between these two military leaders reflected the growing division throughout the empire. Some citizens supported Admiral Dong Yun's practical approach. They wanted stability and clear leadership. Others sided with General Jihan and believed they should remain faithful to the lost princess. Queen Mire tried to govern effectively despite these pressures. She made daily decisions about trade agreements between star systems. She settled disputes between different worlds. She commanded the great military fleets that protected their borders from hostile aliens. But every choice felt temporary without knowing who would inherit her throne. The crystalline throne itself seemed to sense her uncertainty. It was carved from a single massive gem that had been passed down through generations of rulers. When previous queens sat upon it, the crystal would glow with confident golden light. But when Queen Mire took her place, the light was dim and uncertain. Her closest advisor was June, the royal science advisor. June was ancient, even by Australian standards. Her crystalline form had grown complex patterns over many centuries that showed her vast knowledge and experience. She glowed with soft purple light that most Australians found calming. "The people lose faith when they see weakness," June warned during their private meetings. "Your light grows dimmer each day. They notice such things. Perhaps it is time to consider choosing from among your cousins or their children." But Queen Mirai could not bring herself to take that final step. She would stand at her window each evening and stare into the depths of space. Somewhere out there in the darkness, she believed her daughter still lived. The maternal bond between them felt too strong to be broken by death. The void sector remained a mystery that haunted the Empire's borders. Their best scientists had theories, but no solid answers about what lay hidden in that region of twisted space. Some believed it was a natural phenomenon created by the collision of multiple black holes. Others thought it might be a gateway to another dimension entirely. What everyone agreed on was that ships which ventured too deep into the void sector never returned. The area seemed to bend the normal laws of physics. Communication signals died. Navigation equipment failed. Even their most advanced vessels, with the strongest shields and most powerful engines, simply vanished without trace. Princess Soil had been warned about these dangers before her final voyage, but she was young and confident in her abilities. She had inherited her mother's curiosity and her father's courage. The late king had died in battle defending the Empire's borders when Soyul was still a child. Perhaps she felt she had something to prove. Queen Mirai remembered their last conversation. Soyul had been excited about the energy readings from the void sector. She believed they might represent some new form of technology or perhaps contact with an unknown alien species. Her eyes had sparkled with anticipation as she described her plans for the expedition. "I will be careful, Mother," she had promised, "but think of what we might discover. These readings are unlike anything in our databases. This could change everything we know about the universe." Those were the last words Princess Soyul spoke to her mother. The next morning, she departed with a small crew of volunteers aboard her personal exploration vessel. They were all young and brave like their princess. None of them ever returned home. Now Queen Mirai faced each day knowing that her empire needed leadership, but unable to let go of hope. The crystalline spires of her capital city reached toward distant stars that might hide her daughter somewhere in their light, until she knew for certain what had happened to Princess Soil. The queen would continue to wait and watch and hope. The morning started like any other in the Crystal Palace. Queen Mirai was reviewing trade reports from the Outer Rim worlds when the emergency signal blazed through the throne room. Every crystal surface began pulsing with urgent red light. The sound was sharp and cutting like broken glass. Commander Taehyun rushed into the room. His crystalline form flickered between blue and white as excitement and fear battled in his emotions. He had been monitoring the deep space sensors when something impossible happened. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice shaking. "We have detected a distress beacon from the void sector. The signal matches Princess Soyul's personal frequency." Queen Mirai felt her own light flare so brightly that the throne room was bathed in golden radiance. For a moment she could not speak. After 5 years of silence from that dark region of space, her daughter's beacon was calling out across the galaxy. "Are you certain?" she asked, though her heart already knew the answer. "The signal is weak but clear," Commander Taehyun replied. "It repeats every 30 seconds using the princess's personal encryption codes. No one else should know those patterns." Within minutes, the news spread throughout the palace. Admiral Dongyun arrived first, his white light sharp with suspicion. General Jihan followed close behind, her green glow warm with hope. The royal science advisor June came last, her ancient purple radiance calm but curious. "This could be a trap," Admiral Dongyun warned. "The void sector has claimed many ships. Perhaps something in there learned to mimic our signals. Or perhaps the princess has finally found a way to contact us, General Jihan countered. We should send a rescue fleet immediately. Queen Mireille listened to their arguments, but her attention focused on the sensor readings. The beacon signal was definitely coming from deep within the void sector. But there was something else. The long-range scanners detected a small vessel moving toward the Empire's borders. The ship is not using standard Australian engines, reported Jian after studying the data. The propulsion signature is unknown. Very primitive by our standards, but somehow it functions in the void sector where our advanced ships failed. The mysterious vessel took 3 days to reach the outer defense stations. During that time, the entire Empire held its breath. News of the possible return of Princess Soil spread across all 3 galaxies. Some citizens gathered in public squares to watch the sky. Others prayed in the crystal temples that their lost princess was truly coming home. When the ship finally arrived, at the border stations it refused all standard communication protocols. The vessel looked nothing like Australian technology. It was rough and angular where their ships were smooth and flowing. The hull appeared to be made of some primitive metal alloy rather than living crystal. Unknown vessel, called Captain Minho from the defense station. You are entering Australian space. Identify yourself and prepare for standard boarding procedures. The response came through on Princess Soil's personal channel. But the voice was different somehow. Still recognizable as the princess, but changed in ways that made the listeners uncomfortable. This is Princess Soil requesting immediate passage to the capital world. I will meet only with Queen Mireille. No boarding parties, no standard procedures. I have been changed by my time away, and standard protocols may not be safe. The defense station crew looked at each other with confusion and worry. Princess Soil had always followed proper procedures before. She had been trained in military discipline and royal protocol since childhood. This request was highly unusual. Captain Minho contacted the palace for instructions. Queen Mireille herself took the communication. Daughter, she said, her voice carrying across the stars. We have waited so long for your return. Come home safely. Mother, came the reply. I am coming home, but I am not the same person who left. I bring with me someone who helped save my life. His name is Hyun-woo, and he is human. You must be prepared for changes. The word human sent shockwaves through everyone listening. Humans were known to the Australian Empire, but they were considered a primitive species. They had no crystal technology and could not manipulate energy with their minds like Australians could. Most Australians viewed humans as curious, but unimportant creatures from a distant part of the galaxy. Admiral Dongyun's light flared with alarm. Humans should not be able to survive in the void sector. Their primitive biology cannot handle the energy distortions in that region. Yet somehow one has, observed June thoughtfully. This becomes more interesting by the moment. The strange ship continued its journey toward the capital world. Along the way, it passed through several security checkpoints. Each time, the crew reported the same thing. The vessel appeared to be barely holding together, but it moved through space with impossible efficiency. The energy readings made no sense, according to Australian science. When the ship finally approached Astros Prime, crowds gathered around the spaceport. The royal docking bay was cleared of all unnecessary personnel. Only the most trusted guards and advisors would be present when Princess Soil emerged. Queen Mireille stood waiting at the docking platform. Her light pulsed with nervous energy. 5 years of grief and hope had led to this moment. She was about to see her daughter again, but she had no idea what to expect. The strange ship settled onto the platform with a grinding sound that made every Australian wince. Their own vessels landed silently using crystal technology. This ship sounded like it was falling apart. The airlock opened with a hiss of escaping atmosphere. Steam or smoke poured out, making it hard to see clearly. Then 2 figures stepped through the mist. The first was unmistakably Princess Soil, but she was transformed. Her crystalline skin still glowed with inner light, but now it showed strange organic patterns that had never been seen before. Her eyes held depths that seemed to contain knowledge of things beyond Australian understanding. Beside her stood a human male. He was shorter than most Australians, and his skin was soft flesh instead of crystal. But there was something about his presence that made every Force-sensitive Australian in the area feel unsettled. He moved with confidence despite being surrounded by beings who could destroy him with a thought. "Mother," Princess Soil said, stepping forward. "I have returned, as I promised. But I bring with me gifts and changes that will challenge everything we believe about our people and our place in the universe." Queen Mirai stared at her daughter, joy and concern warring in her crystalline heart. The princess was home, but she was clearly no longer the same person who had left 5 years ago. The human called Hyunwoo bowed respectfully to the queen. When he straightened, his eyes met hers directly. No human had ever done such a thing before. They usually cowered before Australian royalty. "Your Majesty," he said in perfectly clear Australian language, "your daughter saved my people. In return, we helped save her. What happens next will determine the future of both our species." Queen Mirai dismissed everyone from the throne room except her closest advisors. Princess Soil sat in the chair she had occupied as a child while Hyunwoo stood beside her. The human's presence made the crystalline walls seem to vibrate with an energy that none of the Australians could identify. "Tell me what happened to you," Queen Mirai said softly. Her light had dimmed to a gentle glow as she tried to control her emotions. Princess Soil took a deep breath. When she began to speak, her voice carried harmonics that had not been there before. It was still her voice, but layered with something that sounded almost musical. "My ship did not crash in the void sector as everyone believed," she began. "It was pulled into what I can only describe as a fold in space itself. The normal laws of physics do not work in that place. Time moves differently. Space bends in impossible ways." She paused and looked at Hyunwoo. He nodded encouragingly. "In that fold, I discovered a human colony ship called the Promise of Tomorrow. It had been trapped there for over 200 years by the same forces that caught my vessel. The humans aboard were the last survivors of their home world called Earth." Admiral Donghyun's light flickered with disbelief. "Impossible. Humans do not have the technology for such long space voyages. Their primitive ships cannot sustain life for centuries." Hyunwoo spoke for the first time since entering the throne room. "You are correct, Admiral. Our ship was failing when Princess Soil found us. We had less than a year of life support remaining. Our engines were dead. Our hydroponic gardens were dying. We were slowly starving in the darkness. But you survived." "For 2 centuries, June observed with scientific curiosity. "How did you manage such a feat with primitive technology?" "By refusing to give up," Hyunwoo replied simply. "Every day we found new ways to repair systems that should have been irreparable. We grew food in spaces never designed for gardens. We recycled everything, including the air we breathed. When one solution stopped working, we invented another." Princess Soil continued her story. "When I found their ship, I could have easily rescued a few survivors and brought them back to Australian space. But there were 3,000 humans still alive on that vessel. They had maintained their civilization and their hope despite impossible circumstances. I spent months learning about human culture and human ways of thinking. They approach problems completely differently than we do. Where we seek perfect solutions, they embrace imperfect ones that work. Where we plan carefully, they improvise brilliantly." Queen Mirai studied her daughter's face. The organic patterns in Soil's crystalline skin pulsed with soft light as she spoke. They resembled neural pathways, but they were unlike anything in Australian biology. "The humans were dying despite all their efforts," Soil continued. "Their ship's core was finally failing after centuries of makeshift repairs. I realized I could save them, but only through a process that our people consider forbidden. The fusion ritual, whispered June. Her ancient light grew pale with shock. Yes, Soyul confirmed. I underwent voluntary neural fusion with human brain patterns. The process allowed me to think like both species simultaneously. With this hybrid perspective, I could see solutions that neither pure Australian nor pure human minds could discover. Admiral Dong Yun's light flared with anger. You contaminated yourself with alien thought patterns. The fusion ritual was banned for good reasons. It destroys the purity of our crystalline consciousness. It saved 3,000 lives, Soyul replied calmly. And it opened my mind to possibilities I never imagined. Watch. She stood and walked to one of the broken decorative panels that had been damaged during a recent earthquake. The palace engineers had declared it impossible to repair without completely replacing the crystal matrix. Soyul placed her hands on the fractured surface, but instead of using traditional Australian healing techniques, she began working with methods that made no sense. She used metal tools that Hyunwoo handed her. She applied heat and pressure in patterns that violated every law of crystal growth. Yet the panel began to heal. The cracks sealed themselves. The organic patterns in Soyul's skin glowed brighter as she worked. When she finished, the panel was not only repaired but stronger than it had been originally. This is impossible, breathed General Jihan. Crystal does not respond to such crude methods. Human methods, corrected Hyunwoo, combined with Australian energy manipulation. Separately, they are limited. Together, they can achieve things neither species imagined. Queen Mirai felt a chill in her crystalline heart. What price did this fusion exact? There are always consequences for such procedures. Princess Soyul's light dimmed slightly. I can no longer reproduce with other Australians. The neural fusion changed my biology too fundamentally. The royal bloodline as it has existed for 3,000 years ends with me. The throne room fell, silent. This was the worst possible news for the empire. Without direct heirs, the succession would pass to distant cousins who had never been trained for leadership. There are other prices as well, Soyul continued. I can feel emotions more intensely than before. Sometimes the human thought patterns overwhelm my Australian discipline. I dream in ways that our people never dream. I see colors that do not exist in our spectrum. But I can also solve problems that would stump our greatest scientists. I can understand alien psychology in ways that make diplomacy easier. I can innovate and adapt at speeds that amaze even myself. Hyunwoo stepped forward. Your Majesty, if I may speak freely, your daughter did not just save my people. She discovered something that could revolutionize how both our species approach the universe. The humans aboard our colony ship have spent generations developing survival techniques that your people never needed. We learned to think in ways that crystal minds find difficult. Princess Soyul combined the best of both approaches. Queen Mirai studied the human male with new interest. Despite his primitive appearance, there was intelligence in his eyes that impressed her. He spoke with confidence, but also respect. You say she saved your people? The queen said. But you also claim to have saved her? How did primitive humans rescue an Australian princess? Hyunwoo smiled. By teaching her that survival is not about perfection, it is about adaptation. Your daughter's ship was trapped in the dimensional fold just like ours. Her advanced Australian technology could not break free any more than our primitive engines could. But working together, we found a solution. Her energy manipulation abilities, combined with our improvisational engineering, created something neither species could achieve alone. We built a hybrid drive system that could navigate the twisted physics of that place. The ship that brought us here is an example of what humans and Australians can accomplish as partners rather than separate species. It should not work according to either of our sciences, but it does work because it incorporates both approaches. Princess Soyul nodded. I brought Hyunwoo with me because he represents the future I discovered. Not Australian supremacy or human determination alone, but cooperation between species that complement each other. The 3,000 humans from the colony ship are still trapped in the dimensional fold, but they are no longer dying. Before I left, we established a stable base where they can survive indefinitely. They are waiting for us to return with help. Queen Mirai felt the weight of impossible decisions settling on her shoulders. Her daughter had returned, but she was fundamentally changed. The Empire needed an heir, but Soyul could no longer provide traditional succession. And now there were 3,000 humans who represented either a great opportunity or a terrible threat. The noble houses will never accept a fusion hybrid as empress, she said finally. And they will certainly never accept humans as equal partners in the Empire. Then perhaps, said Princess Soyul quietly, it is time for the Empire to change as well. News of Princess Soyul's transformation spread through the palace like crystalline fire. Within hours, every noble house in the Empire knew about the fusion ritual and the human who had arrived with their lost heir. The reactions were immediate and violent. Admiral Dong Yun wasted no time gathering supporters. He called an emergency meeting of the High Council in the Great Crystal Amphitheater where important decisions were debated. His white light blazed with righteous anger as he addressed the assembled nobles. "Fellow Australians," he declared, "our princess has been contaminated by alien influences. The purity of our royal bloodline has been destroyed by forbidden rituals. We cannot allow a hybrid creature to rule over 3 galaxies of pure crystalline beings." Lord Sunho of the Eastern Reaches stood to support the admiral. His family controlled mining operations on 17 worlds and commanded significant wealth. "The princess admits she can no longer reproduce with our kind. How can she continue the royal line? What heir would such a union produce? Half-breed. Abominations!" shouted Lady Youngmi from the trade guilds. "We have maintained racial purity for millennia. Our crystal consciousness is sacred. To pollute it with primitive human thought patterns is blasphemy." But not everyone agreed with Admiral Dong Hyun's position. General Jihan rose from her seat, her green light steady and strong. "Princess Soyul remains our rightful heir regardless of the changes she has undergone. She survived 5 years in the Void Sector where our best ships failed. She saved 3,000 lives. These achievements deserve respect, not condemnation." "Respect for what?" demanded Admiral Dong Hyun. "For destroying everything that makes us Australian? For bringing alien contamination into our most sacred spaces?" The debate raged for hours while Princess Soyul and Hyunwoo waited in the royal quarters. The princess meditated using techniques that combined Australian crystal focusing with human breathing exercises. The hybrid methods helped calm her turbulent emotions. Hyunwoo spent his time examining the palace's technical systems. What he found amazed and worried him. The Australians had incredible technology, but they used it in rigid, predictable ways. Their crystal computers were powerful, but they could not improvise or adapt when faced with unexpected problems. "Your people are brilliant," he told Soyul during one of their conversations, "but they think inside very fixed patterns. They have optimized their civilization for perfection, but not for change." "That was always our greatest strength," Soyul replied. "Crystal consciousness provides stability and order across vast distances. But you are right that it also creates blindness to new possibilities." Their discussion was interrupted when an assassin tried to enter their chambers. The attacker was a young noble named Min Seok, whose family served Admiral Dong Hyun. He carried a crystal blade that could cut through any known armor, but he had not expected to face a human. Hyunwoo moved in ways that the Australian mind could not predict. Where crystal warriors fought with elegant flowing motions, the human fought with chaotic improvisation. He grabbed furniture and threw it. He used the room's own decorations as weapons. He rolled and scrambled and struck from angles that violated every principle of Australian combat. The assassin's perfect sword techniques became useless against such unpredictable tactics. Within minutes, Min Seok was disarmed and captured without Hyun-woo even drawing a proper weapon. How is this possible? The failed assassin gasped. You have no combat training, no crystal weapons, no energy manipulation abilities. I have 3 generations of experience keeping broken machinery running. When it should have died, Hyun-woo replied calmly. Compared to that, one confused swordsman is not much of a challenge. When news of the assassination attempt reached the High Council, it only intensified the debate. Admiral Dong-yun claimed it proved that humans were a dangerous influence that corrupted Australian honor. General Jihan argued it demonstrated the value of human unpredictability as a defensive advantage. But the most interesting reaction came from June, the Royal Science Advisor. She requested a private meeting with Hyun-woo to study his unusual capabilities. Show me how you repaired the decorative panel yesterday, she commanded in her laboratory deep beneath the palace. Hyun-woo examined her equipment with curious eyes. The Australian laboratory contained instruments of incredible precision and power, but they were designed to work in only one specific way. Your tools are perfect for their intended purposes, he observed. But what happens when you encounter a problem they were not designed to solve? We design new tools, June replied, or we consult the databases for proper procedures. What if there is no time for new tools? What if the databases contain no relevant procedures? What if the problem is completely unprecedented? Hyun-woo picked up several of her instruments and began connecting them in ways that made June gasp with shock. He was creating hybrid devices that violated every safety protocol and design principle she knew. This should not work, she protested. You are mixing incompatible systems. The resonance frequencies will create destructive interference. Should not work by Australian principles, Hyun-woo agreed. But human principles suggest that if the result is useful, the method is valid. He activated his improvised device and began working on a crystal sample that had been damaged beyond repair. The sample had been brought from one of the outer worlds where an industrial accident had corrupted its matrix structure. Using his hybrid tool, Hyun-woo began healing the crystal in ways that made no scientific sense. He applied heat and cold simultaneously. He used sonic vibrations that should have shattered the crystal, but instead encouraged its growth. He fed electrical currents through pathways that did not exist until he created them. The crystal not only healed, but became stronger and more versatile than it had been originally. June's instruments registered properties that had never been recorded before. Remarkable, she whispered. You have created something new. Not pure Australian technology, but not purely human either. A hybrid approach that achieves results neither species could manage alone. Princess Soil learned to think this way during our time together, Hyun-woo explained. She can now see solutions that pure crystal consciousness would miss. But she can also apply Australian energy manipulation in ways that pure human thinking could never achieve. Jun studied her readings with growing excitement. The implications are staggering. If we could apply such hybrid techniques to our energy systems, our manufacturing processes, our space propulsion technology, your people would need to abandon some of their attachment to purity and perfection, Hyun-woo warned. Hybrid thinking requires accepting imperfect solutions that work, rather than perfect solutions that do not exist. Meanwhile, Admiral Dong-yun's faction grew bolder in their opposition. They began spreading rumors that Queen Mirai herself had been contaminated by prolonged contact with the human. They suggested that the entire royal family needed to be replaced by pure bloodline cousins. Several minor assassination attempts were made against both Soil and Hyun-woo. Each time the human's unpredictable defensive methods frustrated the attackers. His ability to improvise weapons and tactics from whatever materials were available made him nearly impossible to corner. He fights like madness itself, reported one failed assassin. There is no pattern to his movements, no honor in his methods. He uses everything as a weapon, including the very walls of the room. Exactly the point, General Jihan observed when she heard these reports. An enemy who cannot predict your tactics cannot develop effective counters. Perhaps we have something to learn from human chaos. The political crisis deepened when Admiral Dong-yun demanded a formal vote of no confidence in Princess Soyul's fitness to rule. According to ancient law, if a majority of the High Council declared the heir unfit, the crown would pass to the next eligible family member. Queen Mireille faced an impossible choice. She could support her daughter and risk civil war within the empire, or she could abandon Soyul to preserve unity and lose the most capable heir the royal house had ever produced. As the vote approached, strange reports began arriving from the void sector. Deep space monitoring stations detected massive energy, surges unlike anything they had seen before. Something vast and hostile was stirring in that dark region of space. The crisis was about to become much more dangerous than anyone imagined. The emergency alarms shattered the political debate in the High Council chambers. Admiral Dong-yun was in the middle of his speech demanding Princess Soyul's removal when every crystal surface in the building began flashing urgent red warnings. Commander. Taehyun burst into the chamber, his crystalline form blazing with panic and terror. "Your Majesty," he gasped. "The void sector is erupting. Massive ships are emerging. They are not like anything in our databases." Queen Mireille rose from her throne, her light shifting from gold to brilliant white. "Show us the readings immediately, Baki." Great display crystal in the center of the chamber activated, showing images from the deep space monitoring stations. What everyone saw made their lights dim with fear. Enormous vessels were pouring out of the void sector like dark blood from a wound in space itself. The ships were unlike anything the Australians had ever encountered. They seemed to be made of living darkness that absorbed light rather than reflecting it. Their hulls writhed and pulsed as if they were alive. Most terrifying of all, they radiated an energy signature that felt familiar and wrong at the same time. "The readings," whispered June, her ancient voice trembling. "These energy patterns, they are crystalline in nature but corrupted somehow." "Princess," Soyul stared at the images with growing horror. The fusion of human and Australian consciousness in her mind allowed her to process the data faster than anyone else in the room. What she realized made her light flicker with fear. "Mother," she said urgently, "we need to evacuate the Outer Rim colonies immediately. These ships are not just hostile. They feed on crystalline life forms." "Impossible," Admiral Dong-yun declared. "No known species can consume crystal consciousness." "Known species," Hyunwoo said quietly from where he stood beside the princess. "But Princess Soyul and I encountered traces of these beings in the dimensional fold. We called them the Devourers." The first attacks began within hours. The alien fleet struck 3 outer colonies simultaneously with devastating effect. The Australian defense fleets responded according to their traditional tactics. They formed perfect geometric battle formations and engaged the enemy with coordinated precision. The results were catastrophic. The Devourer ships moved in patterns that defied prediction. They flowed like liquid darkness around the Australian formations. Worse still, they seemed to anticipate every tactical decision before it was made. "They are reading our thoughts somehow," reported Captain Minho from his surviving ship. "Every maneuver we plan, they counter before we can execute it. It is as if they know our battle computers better than we do." Within the first day of fighting, the Empire lost 12 major warships and their entire crews. The survivors who escaped reported the same terrifying phenomenon. When Devourer ships caught Australian vessels, they did not simply destroy them, they consumed them, absorbing both the crystal technology and the crystalline crew members. "The crews are not killed," one traumatized survivor reported. "They are absorbed into the enemy ships. I could hear their voices calling for help from inside the alien hulls." Queen Mireille summoned her war council for an emergency meeting. Admiral Dong-yun's earlier demands for Princess Soyul's removal were forgotten in the face of existential threat. "Our traditional tactics are useless," General Jihan admitted, her green light dim with defeat. "The enemy predicts our every move. Our perfect formations become traps that they exploit. How is such prediction possible? Demanded Admiral Dong Yun. No alien species should understand our battle computers so thoroughly. Princess Soil studied the battle reports with her hybrid consciousness processing data in ways that pure Australian minds could not match. Slowly, a terrible understanding began to form. They are not aliens, she said finally. They are us, or rather they are what we once were. The War Council stared at her in confusion and horror. The Devourers were once Australians, she continued, but they achieved perfect crystal consciousness at the cost of individual identity. They became a hive mind focused entirely on crystalline purity. That is why they can predict our tactics so easily. They think exactly like us, but without any individual variation or creativity. They know our battle computers because they designed the original programs millennia ago. And that is why they consume other crystalline beings. They seek to add our consciousness to their collective while eliminating any impurity or individuality. Hyun Woo had been quietly studying the tactical displays. Now he spoke up with a suggestion that shocked everyone present. Your traditional battle formations are perfect but predictable, he observed. The enemy counters them because they expect logical, coordinated responses. But what if you fought in ways that made no logical sense? Explain, Queen Mireille commanded. Human military tactics develop differently than yours. We never had the luxury of perfect coordination or overwhelming technology. We learned to fight with chaos, improvisation, and unpredictable strategies. Chaos is not a strategy, Admiral. Dong Yun protested. It is the absence of strategy. No, Princess Soil said, her hybrid mind grasping the concept immediately. Chaos is a strategy that hive minds cannot predict because it has no fixed pattern to analyze. She turned to address the council with growing excitement. The 3,000 humans trapped in the dimensional fold. They have military experience from their centuries of survival. They could teach our fleet crews to fight in ways the Devourers cannot anticipate. You want to arm primitive humans with our advanced warships? Admiral Dong Yun asked in disbelief. I want to create hybrid crews, Soil replied. Australians providing energy manipulation and advanced technology, humans providing tactical unpredictability, and improvisational thinking. The debate that followed was intense but brief. The Outer Rim colonies were falling one by one. Traditional Australian tactics had proven completely ineffective. The Empire faced extinction unless they tried something unprecedented. Queen Mireille made the decision that would change their civilization forever. Princess Soil will lead a rescue mission to retrieve the human survivors from the dimensional fold. We will integrate them into our fleet crews and learn their chaotic fighting methods. Your Majesty, Admiral Dong Yun protested, this violates every principle of military command. How can we trust our most advanced weapons to alien minds? Because, Hyunwoo said simply, alien minds are exactly what you need. The Devourers understand crystal consciousness perfectly, but they have never encountered human unpredictability. The rescue mission launched the next day, using the hybrid ship that had brought Princess Soil and Hyunwoo home. The vessel's combination of Australian energy systems and human improvisation allowed it to navigate the twisted physics of the void sector. Meanwhile, the Devourer fleet continued its advance toward the heart of the Empire. Each victory made them stronger as they absorbed more crystalline consciousness into their collective. Time was running out for the Australian people. In the dimensional fold, Princess Soil and Hyunwoo found the human colony ship exactly as they had left it. 3,000 survivors waited in their makeshift habitat, maintaining hope despite impossible circumstances. We need your help, Soil told them simply. Our empire faces extinction from an enemy that thinks exactly like us. Only human chaos can break their patterns. The humans did not hesitate. They had survived for centuries by adapting to impossible situations. Now they would help save a crystalline empire using the same skills that had kept them alive. But as they prepared to return to normal space, the Devourer fleet was already approaching the capital world. The final battle would determine whether consciousness remained individual and diverse, or whether it would be absorbed into perfect, sterile unity. The rescue fleet returned from the dimensional fold just as the Devourer armada reached the outer defenses of Astro's Prime. Princess Soyul had brought back all 3,000 human survivors, along with several modified colony ships that combined human engineering with Australian crystal technology. Queen Mireille stood in the command center watching her capital world prepare for siege. The great crystal spires that had stood for millennia now bristled with defensive weapons, but she knew that traditional defenses would not stop an enemy that could predict every logical tactical response. "The hybrid crews are ready," reported General Jihan. Her green light flickered with uncertainty as she watched human technicians working alongside Australian engineers. "But I cannot predict how effective they will be in actual combat." "That is exactly the point," Princess Soyul replied. "If we cannot predict our own tactics, neither can the enemy." Admiral Dongyun had been forced to accept the desperate plan, but he remained skeptical. His white light pulsed with barely controlled anger as he watched humans taking positions aboard the Empire's most advanced warships. "This violates every principle of military discipline," he muttered. "How can we coordinate attacks when half our crews think in completely chaotic patterns?" "We do not coordinate," Hyunwoo explained patiently. "Each ship becomes an independent unit that improvises its own tactics in real time. The Devourers will find it impossible to predict or counter such random behavior." The first test came when a Devourer scouting force approached the inner system. The traditional Australian response would have been to form perfect defensive lines and engage with coordinated fire patterns. Instead, the hybrid crews attacked like a swarm of angry insects. Human. Tactical thinking guided Australian energy weapons in ways that made no logical sense. Ships broke formation without warning and struck from unexpected angles. They used debris fields as cover and asteroid belts as weapons. They even rammed enemy vessels when conventional weapons proved insufficient. The results were startling. The Devourer scouts, accustomed to fighting predictable crystal consciousness, found themselves overwhelmed by pure chaos. Their hive mind could not process tactical decisions that had no rational basis. "Enemy scout force destroyed," reported Captain Minho from his hybrid crew vessel. "Zero friendly losses. The enemy seemed completely unable to adapt to our random attack patterns." But the real test came when the main Devourer fleet arrived. Hundreds of massive dark ships emerged from hyperspace like a plague of living shadow. Their hulls writhed with absorbed consciousness from dozens of conquered worlds. At the center of the enemy formation was the largest vessel anyone had ever seen. It dwarfed even the great palace ships of the Australian Royal Fleet. This was clearly the command ship of the Devourer Collective. "That is their queen," Princess Soyul said, studying the sensor readings with her hybrid consciousness. "She is the core of their hive mind. Every other ship takes orders directly from her thoughts." "Then we must destroy the command vessel," Admiral Donghyun declared. "Without central coordination, their fleet will collapse." "No," Hyunwoo said firmly. "That is exactly what they expect you to think. The Queen ship is heavily defended because they know logical minds will target it first." "What do you suggest?" Queen Mireille asked. Princess Soyul and Hyunwoo exchanged glances. The fusion consciousness they shared allowed them to communicate in ways that pure Australians could not understand. "I will face the Devourer Queen in mental combat," Soyul announced. "While I distract her, the hybrid fleets will attack the outer ships using maximum chaos tactics." "Mental combat?" General Jihan asked with confusion. "What does that mean?" "The Devourer Queen will try to absorb my consciousness into her collective," Soyul explained. She expects to face pure crystal thought patterns that she can easily dominate. But my hybrid nature gives me advantages she cannot predict. The Idza, human part of my mind, thinks in ways that hive consciousness cannot process. While she struggles with that chaos, I can use my Australian abilities to strike at her core programming. Queen Mirai felt terror grip her crystalline heart. You could be destroyed completely, or worse, absorbed into their collective and lost forever. If I fail, the Empire falls anyway, Soil replied calmly. This is our only chance. The battle began with the hybrid fleets engaging the outer Devourer ships. Human unpredictability guided Australian weapons in a display of beautiful chaos. Ships darted and weaved through space like dancers following music only they could hear. The Devourers, accustomed to fighting coordinated formations, found themselves completely outmatched. Their perfect tactical computers could not calculate responses to attacks that had no logical foundation. While the space battle raged, Princess Soil approached the enemy command ship in a small, fast courier vessel. She broadcast a direct challenge to the Devourer Queen using the ancient ritual words that no crystalline being could ignore. I am Soil of the royal house. I claim the right of mental dominion. Face me in the realm of pure thought. The response came as a wave of crushing mental pressure that would have destroyed any normal Australian mind. The Devourer Queen reached out with the collective consciousness of billions of absorbed beings, seeking to add one more crystal soul to her perfect unity. But when she touched Soyul's mind, she encountered something impossible. The human thought. Patterns woven into the princess's consciousness created logical paradoxes that the hive mind could not resolve. Where Australian thoughts flowed in perfect crystalline patterns, human thoughts jumped and twisted in chaotic loops. "What are you?" the Devourer Queen demanded, her mental voice echoing with the harmonized thoughts of countless absorbed minds. "You are crystalline, but your patterns make no sense." "I am evolution," Soil replied, using her hybrid nature to think in ways that broke the enemy's mental algorithms. "I am proof that perfection leads to stagnation, while chaos leads to growth." The mental battle raged across dimensions of thought that existed beyond physical space. The Devourer Queen threw the combined weight of her collective consciousness against Soil's mind, trying to force it into the perfect patterns that could be absorbed. But every time she gained ground, the human chaos in Soil's thoughts would twist away in directions the hive mind could not follow. Meanwhile, the Australian energy manipulation abilities allowed Soil to strike back with focused precision. In the physical battle, the hybrid fleets were winning through pure unpredictability. Human crew members suggested tactics that violated every rule of space combat but proved devastatingly effective. "Ram that ship with the asteroid," suggested Engineer Jiwan from his position aboard an Australian destroyer. "Then use the explosion to mask our approach on their command vessel. Use the debris field as a weapon," called Navigator Suyong. "Fire the tractor beams in reverse and fling those metal fragments at enemy hulls. Overload our crystal matrices and use them as proximity bombs," recommended Gunner Kyung-soo. "The energy discharge will disrupt their absorption fields." Each suggestion horrified the Australian crew members but proved tactically brilliant. The Devourers could not adapt to fighting methods that changed constantly and followed no consistent logic. In the mental realm, Princess Soil began to understand the true weakness of perfect consciousness. The Devourer Queen was incredibly powerful, but she could only think in one way. Her collective mind was a vast crystal that rang with perfect harmonies but could not improvise new songs. "You seek perfection," Soil said during their mental struggle. "But perfection cannot grow or change. You have become a dead end of evolution." "Perfection is eternal," the Queen replied. "Individual consciousness creates chaos and conflict. Unity brings peace." "Unity brings death," Soil countered. Without individual thoughts to challenge the collective, consciousness becomes static. You are not alive anymore. You are just a very complex computer program. The revelation struck at the core of what the Devourer Queen had become. For the first time in millennia, doubt crept into her perfect certainty. In that moment of hesitation, Soil struck with all the power of her hybrid nature. The attack was not pure Australian energy manipulation or pure human determination. It was something entirely new that combined both approaches. The Devourer Queens, perfect defenses designed to counter crystalline assault, crumbled before this unprecedented hybrid force. The Queen's death scream echoed across space as her consciousness shattered. Without her unifying presence, the collective hive mind collapsed. Devourer ships throughout the fleet suddenly stopped moving as their absorbed crews found themselves free for the first time in centuries. Many of the liberated beings had been Australians absorbed from conquered worlds. They immediately surrendered and begged for rescue. Others were alien species that the Empire had never encountered before. The victory celebrations lasted for days, but Queen Mireille knew that everything had changed forever. The Empire had been saved, but only through hybrid cooperation that violated millennia of tradition. In the aftermath, she made the decision that would reshape their civilization. "I formally abdicate the throne," she announced before the High Council. Princess Soil has proven that hybrid consciousness represents evolution, while pure crystal thought represents stagnation.